benefit from the experience of Professor Aguiñaga. So we're recording now, and I actually I would like to start with a land acknowledgement, and I appropriated or stole this land acknowledgement from our guest today, Professor Aguiñaga, from our syllabus from our class of Info 210, which I thought was very thorough, very specific, and it went a step ahead and I thought it was very interesting in regards to information accessibility or informing about the place that we inhabit. And so like I'm gonna quote the whole paragraph because the whole paragraph is very spot on. And it starts with the land acknowledgement that the San Jose State University community recognizes that the present-day Muwekma Ohlone tribe, with an enrolled Bureau of Indian Affairs documented membership of over 550, is comprised of all of the known surviving American Indian lineages aboriginal to the San Francisco Bay region, who trace their ancestry through their missions Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores during the advent of the Hispano-European Empire into Alta California, and who are the successors and living members of the sovereign, historic, previously federally recognized Verona Band of Alameda County. Furthermore, the San Jose State University community recognizes that the university is established within the Taimen Ohlone speaking tribal ethnohistoric territory, which based upon the unratified federal treaties of 1851, 1852, includes the unceded ancestral lands of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of the enrolled Muwekma lineages are descended from direct ancestors from the Tamian Ohlone tribal territory, whose ancestors had affiliation with Mission Santa Clara. The San Jose State University community also recognizes the importance of this land to the indigenous Muwekma Ohlone people of this region, and consistent with our principles of community and diversity, strives to be good stewards on behalf of the Muwekma Ohlone tribes whose land we occupy. That's just like, I like it. That was the first interaction I had with Professor Aguiñaga, was this land acknowledgement. And I would like to, like I share on the chat, the map, California of native lands. It has been around for quite a few years. So I think you will be familiar with it. And I am also sharing a link to invite people to show up and support your local indigenous organizations. And for today's event, if you wish, I would like you to visit the website that I placed on the chat, because that's one of the local indigenous communities organization where I'm joining you from in Novato, Northern California, in Novato, for the Indigenous Healing Center, and it goes straight to their donations. So if you have the means to, I will ask you to go ahead and donate. Without further ado, let me just continue with our charla. I'm switching documents here, so just give me 1 second. And I would like to introduce Dr. or Professor Jose Aguiñaga, who is joining us from Glendale, California. And he has extensive experience in academic libraries, but also in leadership positions. Like there is a chapter that he wrote that we will go over, but I would like to allow our guests to tell us who they are. So our first question is that all superheroes have an origin story. And if you are already here today, it's because we at Reforma consider you a superhero. So what is your origin story? What are your experiences being first-generation college student? And why did you choose a career in librarianship, Professor Aguiñaga? And thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, saludos to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with Hector and all of you here. I consider you all colleagues, colegas. So what's my story? Who am I? I come from San Diego, California, born and raised actually in San Isidro, and went to high school in Imperial Beach, California. But now I reside in Glendale, Arizona. So I've seen the world, and it's interesting just hearing the introduction that Rosa provided regarding Hector. I began my academic librarian career at the University of Houston. So talk about a small world and the connections that we all have. If I'm trying to remember the questions that Hector asked me about my experience as a first generation student and why did I choose academic librarianship. I would say that through my high school years, all the way through my high school years, the experience was good in that I was a good student. I was diligent doing my work. And then when it came time to apply for the next level for the university, I applied, and the polo shirt that I'm wearing is my undergrad institution, the University of San Diego, Catholic institution that my mom was very proud that I was applying for. Thankfully, I got a scholarship and additional funding, grants, and so forth to, at that time, it was still pricey, but in today's market, it's really pricey from what I hear. Anyway, I transitioned from high school to the university, and guess what happened? My first 3 semesters, I was a total knucklehead when it came to academic study skills. I just didn't have the right mindset to get going. And after my 3rd semester, I was asked to literally leave the campus because academic probation. But thankfully, one of my first mentors was one of my faculty members that I had, who was in English. She advised me, chatting one-on-one with a frank discussion, why don't you go to the local community college to bring up your grades, get all the units you can, and then reapply. So there was some promise that obviously I could not see, and I had to retool myself, my mindset as to how to study, how to do it correctly or in a more efficient way. So I did that. I went to the community college, and that's where I think, in some ways, I'll get back to the story of the community college in a second, and that it planted a seed. And I started to flourish again academically. And when I started to prepare for the application, I submitted my application, I re-entered. I was gone for 2.5 years from University of San Diego, but I reapplied, got admitted, and continued on my upper division level coursework for my undergraduate degree, which was in international relations and a minor in Italiano. So talk about learning another Romance language. That was a good adventure, to say the least. I recall learning Italian in my last semester. It was individual study time with the professor in Italiano, and I had to study and read and have a conversation about Dante's Inferno, which was just talk about something that's really deep, to say the least. But so those experiences. So while I was at the University of San Diego, the first nugget of how did I become a librarian, an academic librarian, the last 2 years of my undergraduate study at the University of San Diego, I had work study assignment, which was at the library, at the undergraduate library, Copley Library at the University of San Diego. And my boss, the reference librarian, he became my second mentor in that he started to ask me, so what are you going to do after you graduate from here, from us? What is your plan? And I really had no plan. My adventure was to join the U.S. State Department and become a foreign officer. But to do that, you have to take a meticulous test, which covers all kinds of subject areas. And if you know of anyone that's taken it and they've passed, it is it's like winning the Super Bowl, to say the least. So that did not happen for obvious reasons. But the good thing was Mr. Devin Milner, the reference librarian. He continued this discussion with me in the 2 years that I was there. He was very, just offhands, but he would bring it up in an informal discussion, like, you may want to consider this. That's when I realized that maybe there was something worthy of what he was saying. One time he sat me down and he's like, look, let me just be really upfront with you about this. Why am I'm bringing up librarianship as a career. One, there aren't many Mexican Americans that are librarians. And two, you are male, not many male Mexican Americans in the profession. There are opportunities for you, whether you stay in the state or you go to another state for that master's. So I graduated and I knew that student loans would be coming due very soon. So I'm like, I got to find a job and just get going. And I joined, you're going to love this part. I got a job, I got an interview. For the first time ever in my life, I flew on a plane. I went to the long distance from San Diego to Los Angeles. That was my first flight ever. So I was a little nervous. I'm like, well, what's the deal with this thing? Are we going up and we're coming back down? But I interviewed with Ford Motor Credit Company, which is a finance division of Ford Motor. And I worked for 4 years with Ford Motor Credit Company in the city of Pleasanton, California, part of the Bay Area. And at that time, this was in the late 1980s, Pleasanton was busy. It was like a busy financial center in some sense, a lot of insurance companies and gigantic shopping center and all that. And the Oakland A's were the best team in baseball at that time, from what I remember. So yes, I am a baseball fan, and I'll get to that too later on.
Nice.
But working at Ford Motor Credit, it was okay. It was paying the bills. I was paying my student loan. But after 1 or 2 years of doing that same job every day, my job responsibility in plain English, calling people to remind them of their monthly car obligation. So as you might imagine, I got all kinds of colorful language that I discovered that could be provided in an emotional way over the phone, and at times even in person. So I started to reflect, and I'm like, am I happy with what I'm doing? And, if I want to move up in this organization, I'll be doing the same, but I'll be supervising people doing that kind of work. So it really didn't strike a chord in my heart. And my number one mentor, mi mama, I would go and visit her frequently down to San Diego, whether I would drive or fly down there. And she said, you got to do what strikes a chord in your heart. What drives you? What's the passion that you have? I said, well, I want to learn more. And there's a possibility, when I was working at University of San Diego part-time, that maybe becoming a librarian. And as I wish I had a video camera, you should have seen the great smile that my mom had. My mom, her highest education that she got was 6th grade in Mexico, and she grew up in San Luis Potosí.
Okay.
So, and she was an avid reader with her own way of doing things. So it's just, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn how to read. And when I came in the world, she was already an avid reader. And she had also taught children when she was growing up in Mexico, elementary level. So that combination of things, it's interesting how we all, if we look at our own lives, who we become, it's because of all the events that happened beforehand and what we experience as we go through them. So with that encouragement from my mom to proceed, I started to look for opportunities. UCLA, at that time, Cal Berkeley had a library school, and then also University of Arizona. I applied to these universities, and some said yes, some said no. And the only two that really said yes, one was Arizona and one was Indiana University. I could not see myself traveling all the way to the Midwest without knowing anyone. So I'm like, Arizona, it's tolerable. I can make connections there. And they were very welcoming at Arizona. They wanted to make sure that all of us that were coming in, especially folks from Southern California, would do well. And in the small 2 years that I was there, or a year and a half, we made a close-knit group of colleagues from that cohort, 10 of us, that we still stay in contact.
Wow.
Some of them are in San Diego, others are in Utah, LA, other parts of the country. There's actually a colleague of ours who's now out in Syracuse area of New York. So it's interesting what you can develop. But going into library school, I discovered that energy came back to life, that, hey, I'm digging this stuff. I think I can do this well. Because I always had just an interest to learn more about what's happening in the world. And with the international relations background that I studied and I received and so forth, that always intrigued me as to how decisions get made, especially when it talks about politics and economy and government and so forth, but how to use those skills and then apply it in the setting. So I began library school, great faculty, great researchers. I had not made up my mind whether I wanted academic or public. So I would just take the general courses, the core courses that we had to take. But once I began taking the reference course, that began what I'm sharing back in some ways with my colleagues in the class. And that professor, Don Dickinson, he really opened my mind about the endless possibilities about librarianship, academic librarianship, reference work, the intricacies of finding that information, how to find it. So when I was in library school, the internet was just beginning. At that time, the #1 browser was called Mosaic. Mosaic then converted to Netscape, and then there was Internet Explorer, and then everything else, it just went crazy. So it was interesting to see that development and going through library school. When it came time to complete my courses, taking an academic librarianship, more specific course, and additional research courses, it really led me to the decision that I would be pursuing academic opportunities. And talk about taking a chance in life sometimes. Going to Arizona was like the unknown. I'm going to be settling to a new place. I don't know anyone, but I'm going to hopefully meet some people and make connections. But when I left Arizona, before I left, I was applying for opportunities. One of them was University of Houston. It was a temporary 2-year appointment as an assistant librarian in social sciences. And I'm like, well, they're interested. They want to fly me to Houston for an interview. First time ever in Texas. I was already picturing in my mind that I would only see oil wells in Houston. Far from the truth. Houston is a vibrant international city. If you enjoy food, you got to visit Houston. All kinds of wonderful cuisine that you can enjoy. And it's one of the top medical center facilities in the world. That's the other thing about Houston. So I was in Houston for 3.5 years. During that time, I began my career as, like I said, a social sciences reference librarian. But then within a year, my boss, one of the administrators, asked me to become the interim library personnel coordinator that would deal with all kinds of issues regarding human resources, not just on the academic librarian side, but the library staff side. So talk about learning on the fly and be ready to get some punches, because I felt like I was a punching bag in some ways. It's like, well, we got to test out the rookie that doesn't know anything. So thankfully, and pushing myself, out of that comfort zone. I know I hear this, that a lot of librarians and a lot of library school students are introverts. That could be true. So I consider myself introvert in some ways, but you got to push yourself. If you push yourself, you'll discover skills and energy that you didn't realize you have. And that sometimes, things go well. Sometimes they may go bad, but you learn from the bad in order to enhance what you're going through and what you'll be providing in the future. So Houston was the first opportunity to delve into academic librarianship. It has great memories for me, for my wife and myself. By the way, my wife, April, she's also a librarian. She's a medical librarian, works at a teaching hospital here in Houston, in Phoenix.
Mhm.
And what was funny, we became really good friends while we were in library school. It's very true. I would say that if you have a good, solid foundation with friends, then possibly that may grow into something else. You never know. But so she's also become a great advisor and a mentor for me in some ways when I have to make some decisions, whether it's my career or so forth. So the other aspect about why I decided to become an academic librarian, and before joining San Jose State, I had 28 years of academic librarianship experience.
Wow.
So there's university libraries, and in the past 17 years with community colleges. And remember, I mentioned I had to go back to the community college to make up for my academic deficiency. Well, for the past 17 years, I think that's been a way for me to give back and encourage those that are coming through that, hey, you can do it. Don't be discouraged that you have to write a paper. Well, think of it in parts. You got to build it. It's like a puzzle. See the picture. If you can see the picture, then you're getting close to completing what you need to do. And there's various mechanisms. And now with all the online tools that are out there, not just humans that can help you, but online tools. I'm not talking about Chat GPT yet, but there are resources that you can use that can guide you and encourage you. And I think we were talking earlier about hearing music. Music for me can be a great stimulus in that if I get the right music, not heavy metal, of course, but the right music, it can really get you going with what you need to create and what you need to contribute, whether you're a student, whether you're a faculty member, or in any other profession that you're in. So academic librarianship to me is a passion, and it's an opportunity now that I'm a member of the iSchool, and I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to give back and encourage others that are thinking about it, whether they want to be an academic librarian, a public librarian, a special librarian, law librarian, or medical librarian. It runs the gamut. There are many opportunities in the information profession that can provide a great career for any of us that are thinking about this.
Thank you so much. That's the support structure that you have, that it was your family, your immediate family, friends who became lover, wife, and other librarians who became mentorship figures in your life. It seems that that's like kind of like the ideal formula for like to foster in a institution, like being a college, a community college or a university. I think that's to me personally, that's what I'm getting the most out of this conversation. I know it's for everybody to get something out of it, but at this point, it feels like it's you are talking directly to my experience as well, as someone who comes from a completely different country. When you say like I never thought myself being in Arizona or getting on a plane and all of that. Those are like very like true feelings and terrifying and exciting at the same time, but it's kind of like taking the leap, right? Like we don't know where it will get us, and that's the I think like for us also for Reforma and for San Jose State iSchool, I think it's important to take those lessons as well in and thinking in ways in which we can establish those support systems, that being like a human or like music, right? Or like all of this, because we are in a virtual environment, so it's very difficult sometimes to find that that cohort that you say, right? Like that you met and then you're still around today and you're still in communication. So let me go back to the 2018. You published the chapter, What Have I Learned from the Past, Present, and Future? And it was printed with the book Faces of Librarianship Today. That's a very interesting title, by the way, that I think it would be interesting to see it like resurface that kind of like conversation as well, like the phases of librarianship today and in a continuous like generational move. But in that chapter, you offer a very honest description of your experience as you kind of brief us in the previous questions. When you go through to become an academic librarian, you acknowledge your failures. That was a very honest segment of your essay that I think is very helpful for students like me, for example, or other students like non-traditional students. There is like some moms who are in school that I have group projects with, that are in leadership positions. That is also like very inspiring at the same time. And it can feel like failures, not turning in works on time or not making it here and there. But I think also that the way how you place it of like, these are my failures, but I'm gonna change them into moments of opportunities for learning. Um, so your examples of leadership, and your experience, you associate your experience as being non-traditional student, and how that support system like actually make you like who you are today, and that's how you also want to give back and with this answering that call for helping others. So like right now, like as we are coming close to the midterms, what would be like those words of advice that you will give to a student, basing also in your chapter in which you have a section is like not giving up, right? That's very important. So can you like elaborate and help us out from 2018 to 2023, what have you learned?
Yeah, Hector. I think in the 5-year period that we've all experienced, or in some ways I've experienced, in that I would say the last 3 years have really taught us many things, not only about ourselves, but also the folks that we deal with on a daily life, whether it's in person or through this kind of mechanism of Zoom or virtual meetings. You've discovered who is really there for you, but also who may not be there for X reasons, whether they're afraid, they're just not secure. So what causes someone to be there for you? I think it's the one word that all of us may have already heard. It's empathy. You need to demonstrate that empathy, not just to your own family, but to a neighbor, to an unknown person. You demonstrate that empathy, and I believe in karma, that'll come back to you. It may not be obvious, but to relay it now for our current students at the iSchool, this is what, our 9th week of the semester. Seek out the resources that are in place within the iSchool and even within the university. There are many services within the university, such as within the iSchool, that are available online. A lot of folks are willing to help and to ensure your success, whether it's having a Zoom meeting, whether it's having a phone call, a chat session. There are many resources. And the reason why I got interested and I applied for this full-time tenure track position, I was in awe of the resources and the actual genuine, authentic caring that exists within the university, and more specifically within the iSchool. It's tremendous to see that, and it's tremendous to see a community that comes to the university that they already know that by the time they get here. And if they don't know that, they will soon know it, because there are many ways to interact and many ways to get support and encouragement to continue. So that's, I think it's a main attraction for me as a faculty member, to remind students that services do exist, but also to remind myself that, hey, we're all in it together in a simple way, to make society better.
Yeah, and That's it. I mean, that's what I thought that was very honest, your chapter, because ultimately that's what you're making reference. I mean, in all of this academic experience and research leadership that you have served, is ultimately that honest, willing to make the world a better place, right? And that's like how you go back to it. It just shows like a very honest way of conducting not only librarianship but also being an academic at it. Um, in the same chapter, you mentioned that like where we were talking about, you have a calling to help people, and also your areas of study focus on reference services, organizational culture, and equity, diversity, and inclusion, which is kind of the words that resonate today at every like different organizations. And for our cafe, you refer me to foundational critical pedagogy readings from like Paulo Freire, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, published in Brazil in the early 70s, to like further inspire readings or writings that were further inspired by Paulo Freire. Um, so I'm curious about like how do you like manage to fusion that like that critical pedagogy and your call for her other students and your areas of focus, like, because it sounds like they all can be like very powerful when taken in an orchestrated way.
I like the way you're phrasing it. Since I love music, the orchestration has to be in sync. It can't
Yes.
be out of tune. It has to be the right time. Just to add a little context to what you were rephrasing there, the ability, besides getting my master's in library science, I got a second master's when I was working at Cal State Long Beach, master's in public administration.
Mm.
And I enjoyed it so much because of understanding. I think that's where I got the organizational culture element of having interest, more interest in that. After completing my master's in public administration, I was thinking, well, I'm going to pursue a doctorate in public administration. So I applied at USC and Arizona State University.
Mhm.
So University of Southern California and Arizona State, once again, back in Arizona. And I was accepted at Arizona State. So I went there. But that program, I was there only for 2 semesters. I just wasn't the right fit. It just,
Mhm.
it just didn't sink. So I took a break, continued working. I was working at the community college in Glendale. And Northern Arizona University at that time, they created an open call for those that would be interested in pursuing a doctorate of education in educational leadership. So it would have a focus of, organizational culture, behavior, management, human personnel, so forth, budget. And I got accepted, and I pursued my doctorate with colleagues within the community college district. And I still have friends from that cohort too. And it was a great opportunity to learn. And that's where I was introduced to Paulo Freire's excellent writing and philosophical and pedagogical statements that he's provided to many throughout the world. And I think that it's a good way, the way you phrase it, because I never thought of it this way. It all converged, and it really got me going to delve into who I am, not only as a person, but also as a practicing academic scholar, but also what I can share in future writings with other individuals in the academy.
Yeah, that's it's very important. I mean, it's and you were you that was your theory when you were studying, but uh that idea of helping students to become active participants in their education and active seekers of their own inquisitions, their inquisitive minds, not inquisitions, inquisitive minds, instead of like recipients, right, like vessels in which professors go and dump knowledge in it. I think that's also empowering, right? Like you're teaching how to empower students at the same time that you are empowering them and creating these structures for support. Thank you so much for that reference. And before you go, like I want to leave some time for students who are joining us to get some questions. But I would like to get some recommendations from you, like any books or any other media. You mentioned that you like music. Maybe we get some songs for our next Cafecito, documentary. Anything you would like to share with us today?
Well, I think I'm going to have to go back to the Spotify link to add to the list.
All right.
But one song that comes to mind is one of our favorite artists for my wife and myself. It's Peter Gabriel. There's all kinds of songs that he has. But one, I think that ties in with what we're talking about today, Don't Give Up.
Don't give up.
Listen to that song. That can it can bring some imagery into your own mind as to what is Peter really talking about. And also the other one would be In Your Eyes. When my wife and I got married, that was our song that we had when we left. So some personal and then some philosophical way of looking at music.
Thank you. That's beautiful, Professor. Thank you so much. That's like very, very honest, very intimate. Thank you. I do appreciate that. And good songs to add to our like power study list as well. I would like to open the space, Rosa, for other students who can also benefit from your experience, Professor Aguiñaga. And we are sharing these links on the chat, and they will be also posted on our website at the Reforma SJSU.
Yeah, so we will definitely welcome everyone's Spotify contributions. We've sort of had a list of the recommended readings from the professor, and we sort of put it on our chat there. So if anyone has anything, feel free to unmute yourself or go ahead and put it in the chat. I also would like to extend my thanks very much. Those are some it's like a very nice, intimate opportunity to ask you about your personal life. Now we know that you and your wife are part of these library power couples where both of the people are librarians. I'm always amazed when I hear about this. Professor, it sounds like one of the sort of lessons that we can take as students currently in the iSchool is discussing really making community and sort of hanging on to these connections throughout our cohorts. We know that the library world is actually very small, and that we will probably run into each other again at some point. Is there any recommendations that you have in terms of reaching out for mentorship in the iSchool? We know that this is a Hispanic serving institution, and so we are really excited. I think we probably have some of the most faculty that is maybe Hispanic or Latinx identifying. And so that's very exciting for us as students. Do you have any recommendations if we haven't had any professors that we feel like maybe represent us in the community or can give us very specific advice of how to approach you as a mentor or sort of talk to you even if we haven't had classes with you before?
Well, I think it's a welcoming opportunity. The folks that come to mind right off the bat, Dr. Villagran, Dr. Redman, and even Dr. Norman Moridian. All of them have backgrounds or have deep roots within the Latinx community. And myself, I'd be more than happy to chat with you, any of you that are interested, if you want to discuss about future career opportunities, geographic opportunities that may also exist. Librarianship, the door is open in many areas throughout the country and even internationally, I would say, for folks that speak more than one language and are interested in just exploring what the world can offer.
I actually think we might have to invite your wife on because medical librarianship seems really as an exciting field too. So we'll have to put that on our, We didn't know we
Sure.
could possibly get a 2-for-1.
Or like mixed cafe. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
our
a possibility. Yeah. What's interesting, just briefly, her career began as a public librarian. So the first half of her career was that. And then the second half became medical librarian, and it's a teaching hospital. So talk about just being able to pivot and still use those skills that you learn in library school and apply them in your new job environment.
Also, I'm learning that there is this movement around, right? Like it's not like you chose public librarianship, you are stuck with for the rest of your life. So, like I hear that there is like switch from public librarian to academic librarian to medical librarian. So that's also, it's really good to know that it's not set on stone once that you take a choice, a decision.
I agree. I agree.
Professor, we have another question in our chat from Elva, and this is something that's maybe you can speak to, since you let us know that you had a job that was not related to librarianship at all before you decided to embark on your career as a librarian. For recent graduates working in other industries outside of librarianship, what would you suggest for building library experience?
That's always a great question. If you're in the program currently and you want to build up on those experiences, one way would be, this is towards the end of the program that you may be in, but it's the internship program that exists within the iSchool. Great opportunities that are provided, but also seeking within your own community, if there's a public library or a community center where you can use those skills, seeking out. And once again, it's a matter of, in your own network, chatting with other folks that can provide those opportunities. There might be other places that may provide an internship. Also, are those internships available online? That would be another way. That way you don't have to, commute like all crazy miles to get to the location. But those would be some ways. And then with groups such as with the student group with the iSchool with Reforma, that's another possibility. Within the local Bay Area, there's various other library-related groups that can also help out and guide. And they may know of things that happen, and then they say, hey, we hear there's an opening here. You might be interested in this. So that's another way, especially if you're in a different industry at this time, but you're working on this, that's one way to get your name known.
Thank you, Professor. I would actually like to add that the student groups are an amazing opportunity to network and find other connections. Hector and I are both affiliated with Bibliotecas para la Gente, which is in Northern California. And when you go, they've had virtual meetings, but sometimes they meet in person. And I know this is true in LA. There's a lot of opportunities for networking, because those for people who are already librarians practicing in your pretty much geographic location, and they send each other job recommendations, sort of opportunities to collaborate. So I would definitely say it's an opportunity. We're really lucky at San Jose State, because we're one of the only universities in the country that has a Reforma student chapter. So if people don't go here, we recommend that they just go to like their geographic chapter of Reforma. I would also say that here in the iSchool, Dr. Anthony Chow has an advocacy group that he personally is very invested in. And also all of the student organizations, if you participate and you have an opportunity to interface with like the president, with other professors, and he will write you a letter of recommendation. He will like personally meet with you because you have some FaceTime once you're affiliated with sort of the student organizations. So I would say just personally being in Reforma for a couple of years throughout my time here helped me get scholarships. It helped me get tuition reimbursement, and it helped me like hook up with a lot of people, because I really hate networking. I think it's embarrassing, and I'm very ashamed. There's nothing, I mean, I'm great, I'm an amazing employee, there's no reason for me to be ashamed, but I'm always embarrassed to like promote myself. And this was a natural way that was not difficult to connect with people who already worked in the industry and like, in librarianship, to maybe make those connections. Sorry, so Ella has her hand raised. Do you have another question or a follow-up?
I did have another question. The reason why I ask is because I work in higher education, but it's not in a librarianship role. I have already graduated. Because I worked full-time throughout my program, I didn't get to do the internship. So I didn't know if, as an alum, if it's still possible for me to participate in the student groups or even in the advocacy groups, because when I see that it says students, I kind of check out. So I was just wondering, for alums who have already graduated, are there similar opportunities available?
Well, definitely Reforma is also an alumni group. So we are happy to have you. Like, please do not shut off when we are sending you things. We want you to show up. But yeah, I think most of the student groups are not able to continue with the alumni. We are. And I know that some of the opportunities, for example, CLA, the California Library Association, has a conference coming up, and you don't have to be a current student to get, you can be a recent graduate. So you can still like apply for a scholarship or a fellowship to travel there if you wanted to. I know that there's some places that you don't have to be currently in. You just have to be sort of a current, like a recent grad to still apply for that. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, for me, and anyone jump in if you have other recommendations, I think Reforma is still like a pretty good place for us to network and meet with people who are in librarianship currently. So if anyone has another idea for Elva, I'd love to hear that. And then I also want to follow up with the chat. So Camille says, are there any groups or organizations specific to community college librarianship?
Yes, there is. Through ACRL, there's the list, the CJCLS group, and it's called Community Junior College Library Section. That is the main body that will represent community college librarians within ACRL, which is connected with the American Library Association. So that's one group I certainly, you can join the group through ALA Connect. It's free to join, and you can see the discussions. Previously, the list used to be an easy wait list where everyone would get the messages, but now you have to sign up, and then you'll receive the, you can receive it as a digest or specific messages. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and then Tarika had the same question, and also she says, what is the name of Dr. Chow's group? I will look that up for you and put it in the chat. I think he offers a class, but it's also another one of the student organizations. So if you are interested in advocacy, like it's sort of getting in on the ground floor. And he also, sometimes you'll get an email where he's asking for like student assistance, and sometimes those are paid or for credit, I think. So those are like, if you have any interest, do not be shy. Like when they send those emails, be like, yes, I would be a great student assistant to any of these professors, because you're just as good as anyone else out there. Like there's no reason why it shouldn't be you to be the student assistant, sometimes people get publishing credits, sometimes they build relationships with these professors. So when they send out those emails of like, hey, we're looking for someone to help and be an assistant to these professors, like do that. Because I know Dr. Chow has like several, like Perla's not here, she just left, but she's one of the, she does like the social media for the advocacy group. So, and she gets a lot of FaceTime with the president of the iSchool. So I think that's like an excellent opportunity if that's something that's interesting. But let me, okay, so here's the list. Dr. Villagrán has put it.
Yeah, like the experience from doing that work. And also Professor Dr. Villagrán mentioned that Professor Villagrán and Professor Aguiñaga also look for research student assistants too. So FYI, there's two faculty right here. Before that, I saw Paula is asking if one needs different qualifications to work in a community college library versus a university library.
That's a great question, and I can go like 4 hours on this one, but I'll make it brief. The only qualification, have your master in library science. That's all you need. If you have previous library experience as a staff member, that's also valuable. If you've had engagement by providing instruction to groups, that's always valuable. Because in community colleges, you better be ready to wear a tool belt, because you never know what you might be doing. You could be providing instruction, you could be working the reference desk, you could be doing collection development, you could be working on a computer that the IT person is not around and you got to sort of help out. So it's a great opportunity. And if you're in California, California has a great system with all, I believe it's 115 community college libraries that exist. So it's a great place to have a career too.
Awesome. And what kind of student assistant roles do you offer, Professor Villagran and Aguiñaga? We have a student interested, Paula, actually.
Yeah, to address Paula's question, usually it's at the beginning of the school year. We may have the need for a research assistant to help us with our research needs, and so forth. But there'll be a general call out. Like I had a call out at I think it was last fall, before the fall semester began, asking for applicants, and it went out. The iSchool pushed it out, and then I received, applications and so forth, have some interviews, and then made a decision. Yeah.
And I'll just add, same thing. So I always try to get one every semester if I can, a research assistant. And mine is graduating this semester, so I will be looking for one in the fall, and hopefully can continue not just one semester. You have to be a student. But secondly, student assistants are a little different. So the research assistant focuses more on assisting with research. So with manuscripts, using the library databases, it's very research focused, lit reviews, things like that. Where a student assistant is generally around a project or a specific initiative. For example, I have a student assistant right now who works with me on the Your Voices project, which is going to wrap up at the end of May. And it's been a one-year project, really focused on service work and different equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. But there are projects like that come up all the time. Make sure you get the iSchool alerts, because that's often where the postings go out for research assistants or student assistants. Or sometimes we don't post, like we know we've had a student in a class already, and so we reach out to that student to see if they're interested. But I would keep your eyes open, because there are both opportunities, usually like Dr. Aguiñaga said, at the beginning of the semesters.
And then should we be nervous that we're like, we've never done something like this before, or we don't have any experience? Should we,
We'll coach you.
wait?
We'll help you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I figure we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I just
Well, a lot of the skills,
yeah.
Rosa, a lot of the skills you're already learning while in school. So it's not, whomever you work with will, coach you or guide you. I meet weekly with both my research assistant and my student assistant. So you'll have that support. And in the job description, it's literally a job description. You'll get a job description that's sent out to the listserv.
But I want to encourage everyone, don't feel like maybe you're not, because you don't have any experience doing it. These are the opportunities that we have to push ourselves a little bit and say hey, I have all these other skills. I can learn, I've learned everything. I can learn this too. Because I think sometimes that holds us back because we haven't done something before. We're a little bit embarrassed or, hesitant to have these opportunities. And I think when we have these opportunities, we really need to push ourselves and say hey, this is an opportunity for us. Thank you so much, profesores, los dos. I really am so excited that we had this opportunity for a charla. Let's have our last question, and then Hector can wrap us up. The last question in our chat says, are there any courses you suggest taking if you are specifically interested in community college?
Well, thank you for thinking of community college future. The need is there. To answer your question, take the core classes, but depending on your where you want to go. And what I mean by that, is it just academic librarianship? You want to learn more database skills, more system skills, web design, instruction. So it runs the gamut. But if you have a good foundation, you can teach, you can articulate, you can communicate, and you can engage with students. But also, let's not forget, community colleges is the #1 place where anyone from the community can take any class. So it could be someone that's fluent in English, or it can be someone that is not. So having the skills on how to be empathetic, but also how to engage with the individual or the individuals, it's a great place. And I'm glad that the past 17 years I was at a community college. Many great opportunities and a lot of smiles too, especially when you don't understand each other, but you still find a way to communicate.
I bet a lot of inspired students, because as a community college is serious students, right? Like non-traditional students and working already and trying to superarnos, no? So yeah, that's a lot of inspiring words, Professor. Muchas gracias for your time, sharing your knowledge and experiences with us in this cafe. Salud. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next cafes. And visit Reforma, check out our postings. We have recruitments for alumni positions and other positions. And the Bibliotecas para la Gente, Northern Bay Reforma chapter is looking to have our next meeting at San Jose State University. So it's going to be hybrid. So maybe we, people who are nearby campus can be there and meet with other Reforma chapter officers, or you can join us online. But
Or you can come to my house for a cafe in person, whatever you want to do.
Rosa's house for a cafe in person. So
thank you. Buenas noches. Thank you,
Buenas
Professor.
noches.
Feliz miércoles.
Buenas
Thank you so much,
noches. Thank you so much,
Professor.
Profe. Thanks everyone for organizing. Have a good night.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye.